Welcome to CareHero podcast, where our mission is to educate, motivate, and inspire nurses and other healthcare professionals. In each episode, we explore how our guests successfully advance their careers and improve the lives of their patients and residents. We share practical tips and success stories to illustrate how you, our care heroes, can grow in your own personal and professional lives.
Welcome back, Care Heroes. We're your hosts, Martin Hoy.
And I'm Gerard Hernandez.
We've got such a great guest on today's Care Hero podcast episode.
Yes, we do, Martin. We have Dave Soltau, who is a registered nurse and the founder and CEO of Advanced Clinical Associates and the ACA Wellness Institute, based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And he's also known as Dave the Nurse, a nurse entrepreneur that inspires, educates, and guides nurses and new entrepreneurs.
That's right, Gerard, an experienced clinical nurse, military trained as an officer in the Army Nurse Corps, a serial entrepreneur, and so much more. He has an amazing story and fantastic tips to share, including the beauty of the entrepreneurial spark and how it can significantly hit you, even at a young age. The importance of hustling hard and finding ways to make things happen, to set realistic goals and keep leveling up to avoid complacency, the significance of continually learning and striving to be better, and to stay positive, surround yourself with good people, and make the most out of life.
Oh, sounds like a great episode. Can't wait. Let's do this, Martin.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the show. We have Dave Soltau with us, founder and CEO of Advanced Clinical Associates, LLC, and the ACA Wellness Institute in Scottsdale, Arizona. So, Dave, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We always kick off the show with this question. All of our care heroes, including yourself, are superheroes. But if you had to choose one superpower, what would that be and why?
Let's see. I would want to be able to see into the future, because if I can see into the future, I'd have the ability to make changes today that have tomorrow's outcomes and tomorrow's results based on tomorrow's problems that we can only project and assume are going to be there. So my ability to go forward would be great. Same time, I'd win every lottery and I'd be able to bet very well in football.
So Dave, diving into that nursing and clinical experience, so we know you have over 24 years of clinical experience, very impressive. So could you just tell our audience, tell us more about your backstory, your life story, your background, how'd you get into healthcare?
Absolutely. Well, here's the deal, guys. Back in 1989, actually, I graduated high school, went into college, and my dad at the same time was retiring out of the military as a nurse anesthetist. And my goal in the beginning was to be a physician. I wanted to be a doctor. As a matter of fact, I wanted to be an anesthesiologist or a surgeon. But I'll never forget, it was 3:00 in the morning. I was doing an FTX, which is a field training exercise out in the middle of nowhere. And I was a cadet. And I remember going to the senior who said, Dave, I know you want to be a doctor, but would you ever consider being a nurse? They're throwing these ROTC scholarships at anybody and everyone that will catch them. This is, again, back in 89. And I said, sure. Again, 3:00 in the morning on a Saturday, Monday morning, I went to the nurse recruiter at my college. And I said, this guy told me about this opportunity. I got to find out more about it. And he said, absolutely. Fill out all this paperwork here, and you can apply for a scholarship that nobody's applying for. 8 weeks later, I had a full scholarship ride to college, $60,000 paid. And I remember telling my parents, Mom, Dad, who, by the way, are both nurses. My mom's Filipino, so she's a Filipino nurse, and my dad's not Filipino, he's American. I said, guys, I think I want to be a nurse. My mom was pretty devastated, but my father, who's a nurse anesthetist, was like, do what makes you happy. Find your calling. And oh, by the way, I showed you what a six-figure salary looks like coming out of the military with a military retirement. And at 18 years old, when you see somebody making $190,000 a year that's giving you a roadmap of how to get there, it's pretty impressive. So that was how I got into the profession. Graduated, believe it or not, as an Army nurse in 1996. The gap, as you hear, was 5 years, but I actually transferred schools and then ended up in the military as a lieutenant. Spent 4 years active duty as an Army officer, where I spent most of my time in the cardiovascular ICU until being deployed to Korea, where I spent 18 months overseas. And then at 4 years, guys, I don't know about you, but I just said, I'm not sure if this whole nursing thing is working for me. So I graciously stepped away from the profession, went into medical sales as a clinical nurse specialist, where I represented ventricular assist devices as my area of expertise, where they sent me all over the world. I covered a 22-state region. I lived on a plane. And the doctors would wait for the wheels to touch before they'd start cutting chests on this patient that was dying that required a VAD assistance. That job, believe it or not, lasted less than a year because the travel was just overwhelming. It's the old saying, be careful what you wish for. I wish to be out of nursing. I wish to go into medical sales. I wish to be in a suit and tie. I wish to have all the niceties of a sales guy. Guess what? I got it. Guess what happened? I realized that be careful what you wish for. So I came back to Scottsdale, went back into nursing with my tail between my legs. I said, you know what? I got to retry this whole nursing thing. Never look back. Best decision I ever made. I ended up running an ER for a while until I went into registry, because at the time, the nursing shortage here in Phoenix was so bad that I worked at over 20 hospitals. They were literally throwing hundreds of dollars at people that would even consider working shifts. So I made so much money. And then I recognized and realized I want to be the guy placing the nurses. I don't want to be the nurse. But until I can get to the point where I can financially afford to place these people, I'm going to double dip. I'm going to place you, and I'm going to place you, and I'm going to work myself. I'm going to give you what you earn, and I'm going to make the whole thing. Next thing you know, it went from 2 employees to 4 to 20 to 50 to here we are. And then we transitioned in 7 into home care, and I never looked back. So that's basically a story of where I am today.
Wow, Dave, that's a lot to unpack there. So, of course, you spent time in the Army Nurse Corps. So, of course, thank you for your service there. And then you went to medical sales. And then even then you went back to nursing. But I mean, that sales also gave you that business experience as well, right? That you obviously leveraged that knowledge in the future when you started your own companies.
Correct. Well, what it did is it forced me to get out of my comfort zone, make phone calls that I wasn't comfortable with, act like I knew what I was doing, the old fake it till you make it. You're not going to clinically fake it, but you're going to business fake it. As in, like, I meant for this to happen. We're going to set this up. You just got to do what comes naturally. You can't ever fake the clinical side because everyone knows you are. But you can fake the business side until you understand the game of business. And once you figure that out, as far as entrepreneurialism with an RN, the world's your oyster, because after that, it's just a matter of what do you want to do and how much can I do with it and how many other people can I impact so they can learn the game that I'm actively in.
What do you think that spark was that got you to actually go ahead and hire those 2 people? Because I know you saw the idea, you knew that there's a need. So what kind of triggered you to take that first step?
Well, I'll be very, very honest with you. I've been an entrepreneur since the young age of, I was first grade. If you look over my right shoulder here, it's my first book that I published back in 2000, Student Entrepreneur. It's a money-making guide for full-time college students. But what that is 20 stories of how to make money as a college kid, 20 different stories. But what's interesting is when I was in the 5th grade, I'll never forget it. I lived in Hawaii and they had these amazing food trucks so you could buy food. And I would buy these packs of gum. There'd be 12 pieces of gum in there for 25 cents. I'd buy the whole roll for 25 cents. And then I'd sell them to all my friends for $0.25. So I started to realize real quick that if I could get the supply and meet the demand, I could make a lot more money. And then I started doing the math. Again, I'm 5th grade. What if I bought 4 of those? What if I bought 20 of those? What if I could give away packages where I give away 4 gumballs and you get a 5th for free? I just started printing money, relatively speaking, as a 5th grader. And then when I was in the 8th grade, I started mowing lawns and I started hiring other people, almost like Huckleberry Finn, to do the work where I would negotiate the cost and hire my friends to do the job. And I would just supervise. And I realized this is crazy. I can actually hire more people to do these lawns. And again, this is now 13 years old. Well, that spark never left. And what was interesting is when I was in my teens, I ended up taking a job where I got paid an hourly rate. And I realized, okay, this isn't working for me. So that's where it started. And here's the reality. It just never ended.
This is great to hear. Yeah. So you're the founder, now CEO of Advanced Clinical Associates in the ACA Wellness Institute, as we mentioned. So what is your mission with these companies and how do you accomplish this exactly?
Well, we recognized back in 2007 that home care was the wave of the future. It's absolutely going to be the wave of the future for the next 50 to 100 years. I'm going to go so far to say 20 at a minimum, but for 50 for sure. So we knew back then that we had to create an asset where we could help the masses outside of the conventional hospital setting, if you will. So what we did is we started as a home health agency and we focused on very unique spaces like the catastrophic workman's compensation space, where we work with a big system like Copper Point Mutual, and they give us a patient who was injured on the job, like a Christopher Reeve type injury, and we would negotiate with the big system to take care of that patient in the comforts of their home. at a significant discount or cost relative to the cost in a hospital setting. Think about it this way. You take a Christopher Reeve type patient and you put them in ICU, they're $20,000 a day. You give them to us, you let us build a team around him in the comforts of their own home, we'll charge you $3,000 a day. So do you pay 20 or do you pay 3? Especially when this is a young person that has the potential to live 20, 25 years. And oh, by the way, you're on the hook for the cost. So when we recognized that, we started niching those spaces. So we started looking at all the different angles from the home health perspective where we could be unique, boutique, if you will. What we recognized quickly is there's no reason to do that. You can actually touch all assets. This is why we started Advanced Clinical Associates, which is Medicare certified, that allowed us to be like Blue Cross Blue Shield and United Healthcare providers. ACA Wellness Institute, believe it or not, is our private duty space, which is where we can charge a family a cash fee to take care of their family member at the simplest of levels, which is making sure mom and dad doesn't fall, helping somebody go to the store, giving them a ride to their doctor's office. And then we concierged it, which means we took the asset of Advanced Clinical, which is our clinicians, and we put it into the wellness space where a nurse would actually be that concierge at the doctor's office, where they could actually break down the information presented to the family who's not medical to protect their family. And then after that was done, we would put them with one of our caregivers. So that's the reason for the two different companies. One, again, is Medicare based, which allows us to build all of the insurances. And then one of them is a private duty space. We can pay cash for our services.
Yeah, I mean, there must be a huge demand, especially with care becoming more and more in the household and less in outpatient settings. And I guess for some of our younger listeners and some of their less seasoned nurses that are starting out, they may not know sort of what a day in the life of a home health nurse is like. Do you mind giving just a quick description of what they might expect?
Yes. Well, I can give you the day in the life of a registered nurse from a home care perspective, as well as the owner of a business. But from a home health perspective, first off, in my opinion, it's an untapped, beautiful market. People put their nose up in the air with home health. I don't know why they do. They realize the beauty of home health is the ability to make and design your own business as well as your own time. We've got nurses that see anywhere between 6 and 10 visits a day. Visits last anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour. They consist of simple things such as medication information and management, which is I'm teaching you about your medications, as well as setting your boxes, all the way down to more complex things like wound vacs and the things of that nature. It's 3 to 5 days of skilled nursing wound care per week. What that means is the nurse may have 10 visits on a daily basis. They set the visit times. So a nurse may see 2 visits in the morning after the gym, drop their kids off at school, 2 more visits while their kids are in school, come home, pick their kids up, 2 more visits at the end. As long as those visits are done and the paperwork's completed to standard, you can make what a person makes in the hospital in the same time frame. We've got nurses, again, that do as many as 15 visits in a day. I know that sounds crazy, but they start at 5:30 a.m. because the nurse and the patient have negotiated a 5:30 start time. So there's nothing that prevents that. Now, one of the reputations of home care that in home health that everyone hates is the paperwork. It's a lot of paperwork, but that's all time management. If you're in the house and you're working with the patient and you're doing your stuff, there's no reason why you can't type with today's technology and manage the patient at the same time. They just have to understand it's part of the process. It's part of the game. Where people get into trouble is they see all their patients, then they go home with all this homework, and then they complain that my job is so hard and I work 20 hours a week. Well, you haven't managed your time right. This is a time management game. This is an entrepreneurial game. If you're savvy as a nurse, unlimited earning potential. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have 6-figure LPNs, not RNs, LPNs. I've got multiple 6-figure RNs, but our LPNs that are willing to hustle are killing it. Our CNAs, our caregivers. I've got $1,000 a week caregivers, $1,000 a week CNAs. So when you think that a 40-hour a week CNA in a hospital setting working 312s at $10 an hour is making half as much as a caregiver that's hustling, you start asking yourself, what do they know that I don't? Well, they don't know anything more than you do. They just want it bad. They know the game, because that's what it is, a game, and they figured out the strategies to win.
Well, lots of opportunity if you want it.
And it's all there. It's up to you.
And of course, in your case, particularly Dave, they've got somebody that is their leader that they can get help from to be able to facilitate like this kind of career. Now, so that's the nursing perspective in the home health setting. Now you've run us through their perspective. How about you? What does that typical day look like for you as the owner of this?
Great question. Well, it's interesting. I've got a team of 2 that manages a team of 7 that manages a clinical team of 80. So very much like the military, it's set up that way. I'm going to use the analogy. If I'm the general, I've got 2 amazing colonels that manage 6 amazing captains that manage all the lieutenants and all the privates underneath. And so what that means is I spend a lot of time with the leadership heads. I'll talk to the 2 execs on a daily basis, make sure everything's going in the right direction. We foresee and troubleshoot any problems that are projected out there or that we can predict that are happening. That's the old crystal ball moving forward I wish I had. At the same time, though, I talk to all of the division heads, either directly to the people above or directly to them, make sure that this area is doing well, this area is doing well, that area is doing well. And then after that, it's promotion of the business, like today with you guys. It's the build out of our websites. It's the promotion of our company at the higher levels. It's all the handshaking and the high-fiving. At the same time, it's making sure our team is doing what they're supposed to do. What's interesting, though, is I rely heavily on our clinical team as well as our leaders. And I got that mentality of the military, which is if I can talk to 2 great people at the top, they'll talk each to their 3, and those 3 on each side will talk to the 80. And if anybody gets into trouble, I've got open door policy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, the system has worked. You've expanded your team to 80. So your system's certainly working here.
And what's interesting is we've got goals in 21. They've already been established. Our goal is 3 new employees, 3 new clinicians on a monthly basis. 2.5 is the math. But our goal is 3 new clinicians every single month. That gives us 36 new faces at the end of Christmas. Our goal is 100. And, we keep ourselves relatively realistic on our numbers. I mean, you're going to have people go, we'll get to 400, but when they get to 200, they're disappointed. What if we get to 100 and we actually get to 115? We make everything realistic as far as our ability to reach our goal. It keeps us from giving up when we're already succeeding. So that's our vision when it comes to hiring people. 2.5, simple math, 3 people a month, 36 a year. We've already hit that quota this month. And so with 2 weeks to go, there's no reason why we can't get to 5, and we'll keep going from there.
Absolutely.
You sound very goal oriented. I think you've probably had this mentality for most of your life. Could you kind of describe sort of how that goal oriented mentality drove your life and your career prior even to starting this company or your companies?
Well, what's funny is, guys, I've just never stopped trying to get to the next level. And the funny thing is the next level is self-defined. I mean, some people would say you're already there, but how do you define there? There's always somebody better than you. I'm not trying to be the best. I just want to be good. And if I can take great people with me along the way, it's amazing where you can get to. It's all about inspiring and motivating the right faces. You're going to get to the top. But how we define the top is very individualized, is what I'm going to say. But I've always been driven. I've seen what happens when people give up either on themselves or on life. There's no reason. That's just my theory. Goal driven, always setting goals, always trying to hit it, because life's a beautiful thing if you make it.
You ran an ER, right? You mentioned that when you were at one of the hospitals, I think at Phoenix.
I was actually a charge nurse on the emergency room. And the beauty of that is I got the opportunity to get really clinically sound. I had also the opportunity to work well with physicians as well as the clinical team. I never had any desires to go any higher than the charge nurse position because it turns into a bureaucratic craziness and you spend most of your time in meetings trying to fix problems and dealing with people's problems.
Kind of looking back to when you were in bedside, looking now and with the experience that you have now as a business owner, are there any tips or words of advice you would impart on your younger self?
Yes. Learn everything you can. Surround yourself with great people. Don't get caught up in the nonsense of the job. Recognize the grass is never greener. If you give up now, you're not going to get to where you want to be. It's all about the ride, baby, and attitude is everything.
What do you love most about your current role?
Making a difference in the community and being an influence to others trying to either become me or trying to better themselves. I'm in a seat where when I talk, people listen because number one, they have to, which they don't, but they have to. And number two, because I can make them recognize and realize that where they are is exactly where they're supposed to be. And so it's reminding people that this is part of the process and part of the ride.
I love the energy, and I'm sure your staff love it too, right? So I'm going to ask you this question, but I already know you don't think it's a challenge. It's more like an opportunity. But in your day-to-day then, what are your biggest challenges, or what is your biggest challenge, and how do you overcome it?
What's interesting is one of my biggest challenges, crazy as it sounds, is moments of complacency. You get as an entrepreneur, especially if you're successful and you're doing well and you're making money, where you know what, we'll just do it tomorrow, versus keeping fire going. I have the ability to motivate others, but sometimes I need a good kick in the butt for somebody to motivate me. And so the way I've countered that is I've actually brought on a coach that holds me accountable. And even though you guys are saying you're goal driven, I'm like, yeah, but I have moments of just wanting to put my feet up and just chill. And you can only do that for so long, because what happens is when you're at the top as a leader, people are leaning to you to go, Dave, how do we go from here? And if you got the leader that goes, I don't know, we'll talk about that tomorrow. By the way, can you hand me that? There's moments of complacency at all levels. Number two, it's the whole juggling. If you don't have the right people in the right seats, you're going to find yourself dealing with stuff that really can be delegated because the person who's in that seat is incapable of actually managing that responsibility. The way you counter that is you hire for the right seats. But that's a trial and error process. You're not born with that knowledge. Trust me, you're going to hire the wrong people 12 times. But that 13th time will be amazing. Or if you're lucky, you'll get it in the second or third opportunity or third chance. But most of the time we screw up a lot before we finally figure it out.
Definitely. At least that you just have the attitude to get back up. But, I understand everybody has those moments where you have to kick your feet back and relax. But not when you're the business owner. You can't do it for too long.
Not for too long. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. And then, the other thing is, are you the person that can truly motivate? There's a lot of leaders that sit in leadership seats, especially young entrepreneurs that build businesses that were, I'm going to use the term lucky. I have a buddy of mine who's very successful, and he admits, and he sold his business for 9 figures, that he got lucky. And I'm like, no, there's no luck in that. Knowing what I know today, there's a lot of luck. It's a combination of luck with your ability to take the information you have and then run with it and then approach it the right way from an attitude perspective. And by the way, bring along people with you that can help fill that dream or meet that dream in your own head.
So you have a coach that helps you motivate yourself. You have good people. I'm sure your colonels, you talk to them on a daily basis and they're your confidants in some ways. How else do you learn in order to stay on top of, the changing landscape and kind of staying nimble and all that?
Are we talking about in the home care space?
Yeah, in the home care space like I said, most so in your day-to-day as a business owner.
I do a lot of reading. I read a lot. There isn't an author in particular, but I find myself just doing so much reading. I thumb through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and if there's an article that actually triggers me, I'll spend 2 to 3 minutes to read it. I'll do a lot of listening on YouTube as well to people absolutely smarter than me. And I love when I meet somebody that's like, I screwed up here, I screwed up here. Makes me feel good because I know that they screwed up too, but look where they are. They never gave up. And then I've got people that I love listening to, like Gary Vee. He's an inspiration to me. I love listening to that guy. It's so funny because people are like, are you going to try to be him? I'm like, no, that's too much pressure. I'd like to be as influential as him, but I may never, ever be him. I don't have no intention of being him, but I'd like to be as influential that when you speak, people go, that guy makes sense.
Yeah. You both have the same sort of, you kind of create your own future. If you're not out there kicking the tires every day, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. You do leave a lot of money on the table, but sometimes you get to the point where you got to ask yourself, is this juice worth the squeeze?
All right. So Dave, so circling back to your company. So of course you've got your team. In your experience, what's the best way for them to communicate with management? Not just you, but the rest of your team.
It's straight face-to-face, whether it be over the phone. I define face-to-face in this world we're in today, whether it be Zoom meetings, over the phone. I don't want emails and I absolutely don't want text, okay? Because email and text, I can put my own emotional spin on that. I need to hear your reality and your tone. And in a perfect scenario, if I have to, even in today's world, we're going to sit down face-to-face. I don't let things get too out of control. If I know that you're having problems with him, the 3 of us are going to sit at a table together and we're going to hash it out face-to-face. Because it's amazing what you can say in email. It's amazing what you can say in a text. I triple dog dare you to say that to our face. You can't do it. And if you can, you won't say it with the same conviction that you have. At the same time, a text may be taken out of context where it was actually said one way but meant another. No texting, no emails. If you've got a problem with me, I've got a real problem. I'd like to discuss it. And if it's a serious situation, it's a face-to-face.
Very open door policy that you've got,
1,000%. The best leaders I've ever led that followed in the military had an open door. You can tell me everything sucks. And I'm going to either agree or disagree. I'm going to tell you from my perspective why we're doing it this way, even though from your perspective, it sucks. Because you may be looking at it from an employee standpoint, but I'm looking at it from an 80,000-foot owner perspective.
What is the most inspiring or rewarding moment that you've had in your career, Dave?
As a ventricular assist device clinical nurse specialist, one of the coolest things I got to do was work with the most amazing surgeons in the world. And what was interesting is sometimes fly into places and these guys have got 5,000 heart surgeries. They've got 1,000 transplants. They're world renowned. They're the best at their game. And you walk in the OR and they go, thank God I've got a question. And you're like, huh? All of a sudden I'm the expert. And what's amazing is these guys check their egos to ask me, Dave, the expert, because at that moment, I'm the expert in that space. It's almost like, we think we're smarter than these people until your car doesn't work. And then all of a sudden you go to a mechanic and they're just a brain surgeon. It's very humbling to get to hang out with people that are extremely successful, are brilliant in their game, and they're coming to you for advice. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, some of the other sort of nurse entrepreneurs that we've interviewed, there's many, because as a nurse, there's just so many different careers you can take and so many businesses to start. It's pretty amazing. Being humble is a big part of success, I think, from folks we've talked to.
Yeah, 100%.
Can I ask you also, just to follow up, and you said you didn't love your job in sales, but could you describe for our listeners what that job was like? Because you talked about it a little bit, about the travel, about having to go to all these different places, but could you just describe sort of what the day-to-day was like, just to give folks a flavor?
100%. So again, as a ventricular assist device clinical nurse specialist, my role was to be available as a resource and an asset to both the nurses in a cardiovascular ICU, as well as the physicians on call. Again, I covered a 23-state region, which sounds amazing, except for the fact that it was 60% travel. Now, you think 60% on a Monday through Friday would be great. It's only 3 days. No, that's 60% of a 7-day week, okay? The math on that's just shy of 5 days. But if I've got somewhere I've got to be Monday morning at 6 a.m., I'm on a plane Sunday night, and nobody cares that you landed on Saturday, okay? There were many times where I remember flying back from Seattle, meeting my wife in the airport, her giving me a bag. We'd go to Vegas for 48 hours. We would come back to Phoenix. I'd high five her, and I'd be off to New York, and I'd be gone for 4 days. So that was number one. Number two, I remember flying into cities where you land at midnight. It'd be like 3 degrees. You'd get your rental car. The hospital that you'd be working at was 45 miles away. You drive down there, you check in. Your first class was at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the nurse educator was like, Dave, I'm glad you're here. You're lucky. I've got 14 classes set up for you tomorrow. You're like, 14. And so you start at 7 a.m., you start doing classes. And of the 14 classes that were set up for you, 9 of them nobody shows up to, but you're expected to stay there. That's just the education. When we had a surgical procedure, I'd have to fly in. They'd cut chest when I landed. When things were going bad, they'd turn to you. And then when they bring the patient out of the OR and then the ICU nurses were terrified if you left. So they'd call you all night long, or you'd stay there in the ICU for 3 days. And you're like, well, I think I'm going to go home today. And they're like, no, we need you one more day. And I'm like, I have to be in Minnesota on Thursday, and it's Tuesday. And I've already been there since Saturday, and nobody cares. And you go home and your phone rings and it's an emergent transplant in Montreal. But you did have a nice computer. You got stock options. You got a great salary. And all the times you swiped your card, you got all the points. And when you were in your hotel room, you got to reflect on what it's like to live in a hotel room.
So I know earlier we were talking about, how you see the future, the problems in healthcare that you can address. So if you could fix anything in healthcare in America, what would that be?
If I had the ability to fix anything, I would try to come up with a solution to unbottleneck our nursing school system. And what I mean by that is we've got more people applying to be nurses. They can't be. There's only so many seats in the state of Arizona where they can teach nurses. And I think it's a 7 or 1 or 8 to 1 nursing ratio. In other words, one instructor can only teach 6, 7, or 8 students. I'm not confident on the actual number, but that's what it is. The reason why we can't get nurses into the school is we don't have enough instructors. The reason why we don't have enough instructors is because universities don't feel like they have to pay them what they can generate. It's not what they're worth. Think about it this way. If I'm a bachelor's degree in nursing a university may say, listen, the best I can do for you is $75,000 a year, take it or leave it. Now you're asking a nurse, do I make 75 working 7 days a week as an instructor, or do I work 75 working 2.5 days as a nurse? But if you get your master's degree or PhD, I can get you a little bit higher, but higher isn't much more. Maybe it's 90, maybe it's 95. What they need to do is recognize that a nurse is capable of making X dollars. The whole goal is to get that nurse out of the hospital or to catch the nurse before they leave the profession, because everyone's leaving this profession, unfortunately, for different reasons. And instead of leaving, saying, listen, would you consider with all your experience being a nursing instructor, because we have 500 to 1,000 people trying to get into a school where there's only 40 slots because we've got 3 instructors, 4 instructors. We need 10 instructors. We need to come up with a virtual plan on how a virtual system can teach nursing students how to be nurses. And then we need to figure out how to take that nurse after the virtual education and put them into a didactic, actual physical place where they can learn, where you actually pay somebody to teach them. Like, there's no incentive in the hospital to precept. There's no incentive to be a university instructor. So we've got all these people who want to be nurses with no way to move volume. So you asked me what I would do. I would try to create a solution to fix that bottlenecks, bring on more educators, free up more seats, move these people fast volume to the system, and then figure out a way where we connect them financially with preceptors that want to teach them, because number one, we want to create nurses, but number two is financially in their best interest. Again, nurses are notorious for giving back. No. We need to create them. We need to incentivize people to help grow and nurture nurses in a positive way where the instructor actually has a financial benefit to generate these amazing people. And I know it's outside the box thinking, but that's what it requires.
That's definitely insightful. And we can only hope that that problem with the nurse education system can only be fixed in the future. So
it sounds like these policy decision makers they don't understand the concept of opportunity cost, because in a lot of other industries, and you're trying to take folks from one place to another, you gotta really consider what their next best offer is, and they just don't seem to be getting that.
Well, the decision makers didn't have that opportunity when they were growing up. It's amazing how many people sit in leadership seats that don't want to make that decision because they didn't have that opportunity when they were younger. Well, this is now your chance to change policy because you're now in this seat. Accept the fact that you missed that ride. Let's fix the problem.
So can we switch gears a little bit? I think you talked a little bit about your vision or your online businesses, Dave the Nurse and the Health and Wealth Academy. Could you talk a little bit about each of those, please?
Yeah, sure. So the Health and Wealth Academy has always been something that I've wanted to try to tackle online. Like I said, I wrote a book back in 2000, and I always recognized and realized that online education was the wave of the future. The next 5 years, they're projecting $325 billion is going to be spent just on online education. And because of COVID, the world has changed as we know it. Everyone's Zooming, everyone's learning online. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but how do you get in front of the masses? So what I recognized quickly with the Health and Wealth is there was a lot that I could bring to the table from a teaching perspective. I could teach people how to build a registry. I could teach people how to build a staffing company. But more than that, I really wanted to be a platform where other nurses could teach other nurses how to become who that individual nurse is. Here's an example. If there's a nurse out there that just left the military that went into pharmaceutical sales, there is somebody that would love to learn how that person did it. My vision is everyone creates different courses on how they got to where they are, whether it be how to become a nurse practitioner, how to get into the CRNA, which is the anesthesia school, how to leave the military as an Army nurse, how to go into the VA system. Those are just 4 different examples right there where people would pay. What's interesting is they're like, well, I'll just get that information on YouTube. Well, good luck with that one. It's too specific. But at the same time, there may be a nurse that can teach other nurses how to do what they did. And those nurses may be willing to pay a fee to really get that specific information. It doesn't have to be a ton of money, but it can be a course. My vision is to have 50 to 100 different clinical educators that want to promote their course on the Health and Wealth Academy, where the Health and Wealth Academy actually becomes the net, if you will, that catches all the fish that require all this education. Because what I've learned is there's a ton of people that want to create content. They don't want to market it. So how do I take that person that's got this amazing idea and put them on my platform where we promote them to promote their idea. And then we kind of help guide them on a vision. So that's basically the Health and Wealth Academy. Dave the Nurse is, believe it or not, is a personality. It's the host, if you will. So Ryan Seacrest of the Health and Wealth Academy, it's the guy that people can turn to and go, oh, I know that guy. And I come to the table with a resume and experience and then all of the background to say this guy is no Joe. So that's the whole idea. Dave the Nurse is the host. The Health and Wealth Academy is the business.
Got it. And are those Health and Wealth Academy videos and seminars or whatnot, are they going to be they're recorded and sort of there's a library of them, you can kind of access them on demand type thing? Or
yeah, as a matter of fact, so it's interesting, the last 3 years creating content. I didn't start putting it out until December. I had a pause for different reasons. I just didn't feel like the time was right. And then one day I woke up and it's like, Dave, the time's never going to be right. It's now or never. So that's the way I approached it. At the same time, Advanced Clinical was just so busy in 20. It was an exceptional year. But because I've got these amazing people in place right now, I feel like I can take my eye off the ball just for a moment as I dabble in other space, working with experts. I've got an SEO company that's working with me that puts out all my information. The content's already created. The videos are already done. The courses are already done. And I'm actually, believe it or not, meeting with a lot of different people on a weekly basis that want to become a resource for the Health and Wealth Academy.
Great. So we'll put those links up in the show notes so we can make it easy for listeners to access those resources.
So Dave, say you get to travel to the future. What does the future of nursing look like for you in home health, or also just generally your thoughts?
So I'm going to start with home health. The wave of the future, or the future of home health from a nursing perspective, is great. Everything and anything is moving out of the hospital and into the home setting. I've said it over and over. There are not enough clinical providers, whether it be nurses, physical therapists, occupational therapists, even caregivers, for the projected volume, which is going to overwhelm our medical system here in the next 20 years. It's going to be a silver tsunami like we've never imagined. The best part about COVID / worst part about COVID was the fact that it caught us off guard from a volume perspective. Turn on the news and we can see that everybody and their brother is sick and there's not enough nurses. That's the way it's going to be moving forward. That's my concern. This is why we have to unbottleneck, if you will, the schooling system of our nurses so we can produce more clinicians quicker, okay? The future of home health is very, very bright. It's going to be exceptional. In reference to nursing, what is the future of nursing? Nursing in the future is going to be highly technologically driven, where you're going to see nurses doing more with less. My biggest concern right now is our world as a whole is getting bigger, is getting heavier. And I joke with you, but I meant it. It would really take 3 of us to lift heavy people. I see nurses coming into the profession and almost leaving as quickly as possible because it's a challenging space that we're in. And unless we create solutions here quickly, I foresee some type of mass exodus because the number of nurses retiring on an annual basis mirrors the number of nurses that are coming into the profession. Average nurse is in their 60s right now. That's a scary reality. So if your average nurse is in your 60s and they're going to work to be 65, we got 5 more years. And if we can't produce them, we can't take that 65-year-old nurse who's got 20 years of experience and make them an instructor where they're still making great money. We can't produce that 25-year-old nurse. So the other thing is most nurses are leaving bedside within 5 years. They're going in nurse practitioner, CRNA, entrepreneurialism, sales, or they're leaving altogether. And so if we don't create that or stop the bleeding, if you will, we're in a world of hurt. We're projected to have some serious problems. This is my concern. This is why Dave the Nurse is very important to me, and the Health and Wealth Academy is very important to me. This is why staying an asset with advanced clinical and wellness is very, very important to me in Phoenix and Scottsdale.
We can only hope there's more individuals such as yourself that's really try to see this future and make a positive impact.
Absolutely.
So do you have any final thoughts or advice for our care heroes today?
Absolutely. If you're a nurse or you're a nursing student or somebody wanting to be a nurse, I'm going to tell you, it's the best profession I've ever selected, best decision I ever made. If you're a guy who's on the fence, there's a lot of men going into space. So don't hesitate just because your buddies think it's crazy. It's a great space to be in. Unlimited earning opportunity for those that are willing to work hard. And the best part is once you've got your credentials, your RN and your DSN, it doesn't matter what you can do. You can run a hospital. You can be a CFO. You can go into microbiology. You can be an entrepreneur. You can do anything and everything you want to do. Just recognize that the sky's the limit. It's all up to you and how bad you want it.
Love it. I can see the Gary V influence right here. Right? It's that energy. It's that passion. I love it.
I appreciate it very much.
So Dave, as we wrap up here, so what's the best way if our care heroes want to reach out to you or say hi or find out more about what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, here's the best part. I have 14 followers on YouTube. So you can find me on YouTube at Dave the Nurse. On Instagram, it's growing well. LinkedIn's growing well under Dave the Nurse and the Health and Wealth Academy. And Facebook's been exceptional for me. It's only been 30 days, but I think about 6,000 followers between all the systems, except for YouTube, which is fine. But DaveTheNurse.com, you can check out all my current videos. And very much like you guys, we take videos and turn them into audios and turn them into podcasts. And we're taking advantage of all of the opportunities from an SEO perspective to build out this web. The goal for the next 6 to 9 months is brand, name, face, and voice recognition. Always available. You can also send me an email at DaveTheNurseBiz@gmail.com. And you can connect with me. And again, all of the platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, my favorite with 14 followers, YouTube.
Such a great episode with Dave the Nurse, Gerard. Now, Care Heroes, if you're looking for tips on how to become a more confident clinician or want to learn more about starting a nursing business, make sure to check out Dave's classes and programs at DaveTheNurse.com and the Health and Wealth Academy at HAWacademy.com. We'll have these links in the show notes. Now, it's time for the handover.
All right, Care Heroes, what you've all been waiting for. Here's our top takeaways from this episode. That entrepreneurial spark can hit you at any time, even at a young age, so don't be afraid to take it and run with it. If you hustle hard enough, you can make things happen for you. Don't get discouraged. Get moving and find a way. Set realistic goals and continue trying to get to the next level. Don't get too comfortable being complacent. Keep reading and keep learning. Always strive to be better. And last but not least, stay positive and surround yourself with good people. Life is all about how you approach each moment and what you make of it.
Awesome handover, Gerard. We also want to thank our Care Heroes for listening, and don't forget to rate our podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you want a shout out on a future episode, just visit CareHeroPodcast.com. Go to the Contact Us page, submit your name, role, and location for a shout out on a future episode.
That's right, Martin. Now it's time for some shout outs.
We'd like to give a shout out to Allison, nurse practitioner from Boston, Massachusetts, Nicole, a registered nurse from Los Angeles, California, and Catherine, therapist from Portland, Oregon.
Okay, folks, that's it for now. Thank you for joining us on the show. We'll be back again, same Care Hero time, same Care Hero channel.
Thanks for listening to Care Hero Podcast. Don't miss out on future content. Hit subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcast app. Also, remember to visit us at CareHeroPodcast.com to send us your feedback, sign up for the newsletter, and nominate a Care Hero to be interviewed on a future episode.